What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Deep Stage podcast. We're getting ready to shoot another episode, an exciting episode, because I get to talk with an old-time buddy, a old race individual, and we're a little thin today on our episode. Jay is still out taking care of some family. You know that if you've got littles, when one is sick, everybody gets sick, so it gets passed along. So what should normally be a 3-day recovery, yes, you may recover, but now you have all the others that have to recover. So Jay is still in the trenches, and maybe we will see him back. Who knows? Probably next episode. Fingers crossed. In the interim, we have Jay Zilla here in spirit with his hat. Thanks for joining us, Jay. Appreciate you. But we are also going to introduce this long buddy of mine. It's been a blast to see him grow in this industry. It's been awesome to see where he's taken his talents and his passion, and it's cool to see it come full circle. We've done a lot of drifting with him. We've done a lot of racing with him way back in the early days of the shop, and how this world has gone full circle. So if you guys are buying our merch, this is a really cool thing. You're supporting Bailey's High Performance, but you're also supporting somebody else that we grew up in this race world with, and we are super excited to be able to do that. So small world, small things. This is the same thing that happens on this Deep Stage podcast. We're all entrepreneurs. We're all vision takers. We're all risk takers. And here we are with Nate Hamilton, 144 Motorsports, and what he has done and been able to accomplish in this world, in this industry. So here we are. For everybody joining in, I've known Nate for, almost 15 years. We were Blue Mountain Road. Way to go, Tori.
All the sound checks out the window.
Yeah, there we go. We were out on Blue Mountain Road, but we were drifting. I was building my brother's car, and we were out drifting Mineral Wells.
Mm-hmm.
And the streets of DFW.
That's right.
Wherever we could, warehouses, anything like that. It was a very fun experience. And we were just tadpoles, dude.
That's how it all started.
My name is Nate Hamilton. I'm 23 years old from Dallas, Texas. I first started drifting with an old buddy back in the day. Just sliding around when it got wet. We just had stock 240s and basically just went out to have some fun really late at night at industrial areas, and just brought like 2 or 3 cones and just basically had fun. We had no clue what we were getting ourselves into. Trying to go pro, trying to push my driving skills, and basically just see how far I can take myself. Never thought I would ever even be sponsored. And the best advice I can give to somebody starting to drift is basically just have fun and just keep a cool head and stay positive and never tell yourself that you can't do it. We started out the same way everyone else is starting out, just bone stock 240s and just having a lot of fun.
Just young, reckless,
Yeah,
ridiculous, like doing hood rat stuff back in the day. And I don't think a lot of people knew it wasn't mainstream as much.
I don't think I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those just intuitional actions where you were just doing what felt good at the time, for me personally, not knowing where it would go or even having a big lust of where it was going. We were just doing it.
How did you, when it came to drifting, what was the attraction to you in drifting?
I mean, it's such a tough question because there's so many stages of it in my life, right? Where, at a very young age, I'm riding that like 13, 14, 15. Okay, we're all getting cars now. So I'm a skateboarder that's now getting a car. and I'm around this skate culture, and we're sliding cars in the dirt. Like my buddy Joseph Bell was literally just at the skate park sliding a car in the dirt, meaninglessly.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
it was like, that was the first sight of seeing cars slide, and he really pushed us into what drifting could be. And from there it evolved into like our small skate culture drifting. To your point, it would rain. We were in Plano industrial parks.
Yep.
We'd bring a cone. Suddenly we were doing a donut. We're like, well, we could do a donut clockwise, counterclockwise, wait, a figure eight. Wait, what are we doing? I mean, it just kind of kept evolving, right?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So do you think the culture of skateboarding and putting style into what you were doing translated into drifting?
I'd like to think so. You know, I definitely don't think it's required, but I think that the nature of drifting or driving a car fast in motorsports in general really relates to the nature of, you know, a BMX or skateboarding culture, because you just kind of ride that edge always.
Yeah. Yeah. And so drifting for you, especially in the younger parts of being a business owner and what we were doing when we were watching my brother and you guys go, you ventured down the road of going professional with or pursuing that road of professional. Was that a natural instinct where that picked up, or did that become a dream of yours? What happened with that?
Yeah. So I'd like to share kind of the longer story that I don't share often, which, you know, to put like years into a story here is to say, you know, so we're going from skateboarding to sliding cars around it in the rain at night. You know, we're bringing 2 sets of tires and a cone just in case, right? It was just very low lift. And, you know, we naturally kind of created this little crew. We were called Drift Mode, right? So it was like Joseph Bell, Adam Green, myself, Jeff Lane, George Lopez. And, you know, we were around Triworks and Garland and that whole kind of crew. And with that being said, it was like, you know, George was driving to the shop after work one day, and he was in a freak accident with a cop. I don't know if you remember that.
Rest in peace.
So George passes away, right? He gets shot in his 240. We basically run up on him like, why is he not at the shop? So with that being said, I remember distinctly him looking at me and him kind of leading our drift mode, if you will. And he was like, I'm going to be a pro driver. And I remember thinking in my head like, whoa. Like, all right, well, if you're going to be one, maybe I'll be one. And, you know, when we were still just running around the streets, it was kind of just like a random idea, you know. And when he passed away, I really felt like, wow, I should try to fulfill this. And, you know, come law at Customs Unlimited, he put my first V8 in my 240, and pretty much with 16S and XDC, he was like, you're going to Englishtown and you need to compete in this car. And I did not want to go, right? I was like, I don't want to go to Englishtown. I don't want to really compete. I'm a street drifter. Like, this is fun. But I thought of George, and I was like, ooh, I'll do this for him. And I ended up qualifying first and finished fourth. And I just remember in my brain just being like, I have to do this. So to the point, right? It was, when I was younger, it really wasn't like what I was gonna do. It just like really came to me, and I thought drifting chose me. And with George, I'm actually gonna pursue this now, you know?
Nice. So still pursuing professional drifting?
Things have changed a bit, right? I think the marketplace has changed. Quote unquote, pro drifting has changed a lot. So I definitely find myself designing my own tours, right? Being more creative, I'd say, and just the how to use drifting. So I'm not necessarily driving as a pro, but I am driving with some of the top pros and doing more shootouts with grid lifes. And so just kind of mixing up all sorts of drifting these days.
So you say an interesting thing, the evolution of pro drifting, right? So Formula D, we've grown up watching that. Okay. In my world, I'm in drag racing. So I see Formula Drift as the NHRA pro big dog, multi-million-dollar race cars programs that Formula Drift is. And I think if you don't have, just the perception, if you don't have $1 million backing per se, it's hard to compete with those guys. I mean, those cars are insane.
Yeah, and I will say, like, in the pro drift setting, there's been a lot that's sorted itself out, right?
Okay.
So, like, there's new kids coming in that can pretty much purchase a pro car nowadays. So, yes, it is big money, but I would say a lot of the tricks and tips are kind of all out there now, which does expedite a lot of that learning curve. But, yeah, I think drifting in its own nature is just difficult to judge and difficult to understand who wins anyway. And I think that is kind of the big speed bump in our sport right now. Not quite bringing in partnerships to, spend $400,000 annual.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's interesting,
It's at a growing pain stage, maybe? Would you put it at that? Where they got to sort out some of the stuff, or?
I just think it's the nature of the beast in its own character, right? Like, at this point, it's like, you can kickflip and I can kickflip, and whose kickflip is better? We both landed a kickflip.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times that's what drifting is. It's like, it's a judged sport with style, and that's a lot of subjective results.
I could see that. So for some of the guys that don't know, drifting, it's not what you find at an intersection on the streets, by the way. Okay. These guys are talented guys. But drifting is a judged racing event, right? And instead of me explaining, I'll let you explain for our drag race straight line guys that don't compute the drifting.
Yep.
In a nutshell, explain what you're talking about when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, just imagine there is a few professional series around the world, and they all judge a little bit different. But just to go back to the basics, on average, line, angle, and style, right? Okay. So you basically have a line that they'd like you to run. So, for example, if there's a K-rail or, a wall section, you need to be within a ruler from it, right? So guys are constantly running their bumpers on walls. They'll have a rear clip often, a front clip often. And yeah, you're just working with your momentum of the car, the angle you can carry through the sections of the track where you need to be putting the car. Mm-hmm. And then your style is obviously the most subjective, which is just, how you get to your angle. How can you throw the car into turn one, flick it into turn two? And certain guys will either be, like, say, slower to angle or faster to angle, and that kind of creates your style. So on average, it's line, angle, and style.
Gotcha. And how much of when you were running professional with that in Formula Drift, how difficult was it to keep up with some of those professional style cars to the Nate Hamilton that we grew up with? How was that jump from grassroots to pro?
Super tough for me, right? So, like, 2012 was my first year to go pro, and a few stories there. It was so interesting, right? So I was on Achilles tires in the XDC world. So for those who don't know, Extreme Drift Circuit was basically a feeder series into pro.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they have Pro Spec or Pro 2, and then they have Pro 1 or just like Pro, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, essentially there's like the 450 class and the 250 class for all the motocross nerds out there, where prior there wasn't. You were just coming from, hey, I got a license with Aaron Losley at Lone Star Drift in Mineral Wells, and now suddenly I'm against Vaughn Gittin Jr. and Chris Forsberg. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like my story and Chelsea Denofa's story and others, right? Where we came from XTC, we had zero experience at Long Beach and the other professional tracks that we got to join, and all the other guys have been doing it for 7, 8, 9 years. So the learning curve back then is very difficult because there was not a feeder into the Pro 1 class. It was just from grassroots to Pro 1. But the Achilles story was in Extreme Drift Circuit, I was receiving free tires, which was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I remember getting my license from the series. I think I ended that series out in third, Denofa in first, and we both were going pro around the same year. The point of the story was I called Achilles and I was like, guys, I did it. I'm going pro.
Yeah.
And they were like, awesome. Tires are going to cost this much money. And I remember being like, wait, guys, sorry, I'm trying to say I'm going pro. I'm going to Formula Drift. And they're like, yeah, man, sounds good. You know, it's kind of like going from high school to college. You're in a whole different ballgame now. Wow. Tires cost this much money. And I will always remember going from grassroots or pro-am drifting to pro, and there was no party. There was no celebration. It just got more difficult. And I remember thinking, to the point of George, right? It was like, I did it, dude. I'm pro now. And it was, not to say disappointing, but it was just vastly different than you would imagine it being.
Because of the sponsorship requirements or the dropping of them?
I mean, I'm just a big fan of pointing the finger at my own self, right? So I would say to my own self, like, I just was naive. I just didn't understand what it would be like to operate a professional program versus what it was to operate an XTC program. So I just was a young kid that was a little naive, and you know, my family had no motorsports background. I didn't have like an agent or a coach or anyone, you know. Some of the top dudes like Forsberg were mentoring me, but they would only share so much, right? They weren't going to give everything away. So
that's the motorsports world, right? It's competition. Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's interesting. But so that transition to going pro, how many years did you stay on the pro circuit?
Yeah, so I think 13 was a good year for me. 14, around 15, I started to lean onto a separate shop in Juku Racing out of Florida.
Yep.
So they kind of watched my first few years operating in the pro world, and you know, they could tell it was me and a buddy and my dad. You know what I mean? They were like, oh, cool. Like, this kid has a lot of talent. He's got a buddy, and he's got his dad who's trying to help him out.
Yeah.
So it was like, they opened up the doors for me. I ended up moving to Florida. I ended up rocking and rolling with them from like 14, 15, 16. And I had another huge transition in my life around that time. So yeah, 12 to 17 was my pro class.
Nice. And I've always known you to have 144 Motorsports.
Mm-hmm.
So you've always done shirts, you've always done merch, everything else. I remember the car always had 144 Motorsports on it.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? What is 144 Motorsports?
Yeah, so the super short story was when I was when I was living with my parents, I was really young, right? Like, one of my first memories was a garage door opening, and I see this kid shooting a basketball, and I kind of basically had my first friend, right? So I'm just a young kid. Turns out my friend Tyler had Huntington's disease. He ends up passing away. And wild story, dude. He died at 4:44, and he loved the number 4, and his favorite like icon was Brett Favre. And the clocks, like the analog clocks in the house, stopped at 4:44 when he passed away.
Wow.
So hear me out, right? So I'm like, you know, this is when I was younger, like 8 or something. So like nothing in motorsports had anything coming up in the world yet. So it was like years and years and years later when I kind of am going to these local events and I do need to choose a drifting number. I chose 44, which would be 4 for him and 4 for me, right? Just thought I would pick one up.
Yeah.
When Come Law at Customs Unlimited sent me to Englishtown, I roll into Englishtown and there's this huge Mobil 1 like toter and stacker and like pro program with Ryan Turek and Steve Angerman.
Yeah.
And Ryan Turek was 44. And dude, I was like, what am I going to do, right? Like this 44 means so much to me. That I literally just on the spot at the driver registration thought of Travis Pastrana with the 199. And I was like, oh, I'm going to put a 1 in front of this thing.
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, no 3 digits in drifting. You can't have a 3-digit number in drifting. It's not been done yet. And I was like, Matt Petty, I need this. Like, please, 144. And I'll never forget like going to Home Depot and buying one of those ones.
Yep.
You know, you can go buy the stickers with
the mailbox ones.
Yeah, exactly. And I just put that in front of my 44 and boom, Englishtown, qualified first. They're calling my name. Everyone's like, who's this Nate Hamilton kid? And I kind of was introduced to Jared and Chris and DA and like the drifting scene there. So it just really stuck from that moment.
That's awesome. So how did you get into making merch with 144? Where does this come in?
Yeah, dude. So really it all comes with screen printing. And, you know, essentially like as a young kid, I really struggled with not being on my feet. Like my dad raised me like Texas water, which was Bud Light, no shoes. We're building an awning. We're laying concrete. Like he just did everything around his house himself.
Yep.
And so, you know, I'm mowing yards for skateboards. And so I had an opportunity to basically be a pressman, right? Like it was like, hey, do you want a screen print and, you know, push ink through this mesh count and lay ink on a shirt? And I hated it at first, right? It was like literally I remember doing like butterflies and rainbows and cheerleading stuff, just like whatever was coming in the door.
Yeah.
And I hated it. But what I was able to do was work Monday through Thursday. They would have a schedule. I could knock it all out kind of like on whatever timing I needed to just make sure the customer had their work done.
Yeah.
And then Friday I was able to like load a trailer up, like a little open bed, and drive myself to Mineral Wells and drift all weekend, come back home and do it again. So yeah, I just kind of fell into being a pressman, and, you know, kind of flash forwarding to that 2017 moment when I had been in Formula Drift so long, I didn't know enough about business, and I knew that everything around me was in Juku's and not mine. And so I thought, ooh, I'll take a year off. I'll go buy a press. I'll start screen printing for these companies that I love. And then I don't know how that'll work out, but it'll just turn into something.
Yeah.
And that's like that's what my vision was. And I kind of blindly went for it.
So then you moved back here.
Yep.
Was that 2018, 2019? When did you move back?
Yeah. Super late 17. Basically 18, I moved back.
And started up there in Denton printing.
Actually, I started in Wiley, but very close. Yep, started in Wiley. You know, was able to basically spend round numbers like $4,000 on all the equipment I needed. So I had an oven, a flash, and a press, and I kind of just got to work, you know?
That's awesome. Did you ever go to school for any business?
I did not.
No?
I did not.
I dropped out of school for it.
Yeah. So I will say though, real quick, my parents were awesome, right? Like literally, like, you know, quick story, right? My parents are all from Michigan. My whole family's from Michigan. The day my parents got married, they jumped in a car. They said, later, Michigan. They were driving to California, ran out of gas in Texas. Dad started digging ditches. Mom was a front of house at a circuit board company. And they both just worked really hard and pretty much stayed in those same companies their whole life, right? So they were very consistent, and they did teach me a fair amount about business and just how to operate. And it was, so shout out to Mom and Dad, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good. So has it always been sunshine and rainbows for you in business? I mean, let's start with the race program.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult was it to run the race program?
I mean, I would say, you know, I definitely had an ebb and flow of the sunshine and rainbows, meaning like in the very beginning, it was very natural. Like Cumlaw sends me up to Englishtown. Suddenly Forsberg and Drift Alliance and everyone's, you know, Vaughn's inviting me over for like crabs, and Chris is calling me and stopping by Dad's backyard and drinking Bud Light and teaching me how to work fucking rebound and suspension. And, you know, so like I definitely had a lot of opportunity when I was younger, and I think I drank and I partied and I was a pro drifter and I drove around the country, and I didn't know anything about business, and I looked myself in the mirror one day and go, hey man, like, why are people paying you to go drifting? Like, you're getting the same result year after year. You're not getting any better. You're not, you know, you're not growing in this. And I wasn't. Like, I was drifting well and it was fine, and I would make a 16 and I would never make an 8. And I was just unhappy with my performance, and I just thought I would take myself out of what I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like I literally was like, all I know is I can't do this again. So let me go try to screen print and I'll just figure it out. And if drifting's made for me or meant for me, it'll work out. And I literally just like kind of gave it up.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was like everything was really good, and then everything was really sad for a while. And I don't want to say sad because I was having fun screen printing, but I thought to myself, as soon as I start screen printing, I'll make $1 million and everything will be great. And then next year I'll be back to drifting.
Yeah.
And it was like not that at all. Like 12 months flashed by and I was just figuring out how to write an invoice properly, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot of how all of these businesses happen.
Right.
Right. You've got that hunger for it.
Mm-hmm. I definitely would say, you know, like when people ask me, why'd you start business? I'm like, out of necessity, right? Like out of something I had to do, because if I wanted to feed my family and I wanted to, you know, make the right decisions with sponsorships, it has to be coming from me and it has to be my word. And that was the hardest part with some of the partnerships, if you will, was like, you know, and I mean this with all love to Njuku, but Njuku could say like, nope, we're not going to go there anymore. And I'd be like, all right, I guess I got to call him and tell him we're not going to go there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so like I didn't get to drive the ship. And I think that was that young, like, entrepreneur spirit in myself I didn't even know I had. But I knew that if I did it my way and I could keep my word over time, I could build relationship and I could underpromise and overdeliver. And I think that's really what started to happen in 2018, 19, 20 and onward, you know?
I like that. What I'm picking up from some of this is there were two aspects of what you were doing. So one, managing your race car, the race program with your dad and your friend. And then two, now you got to manage relationships and sponsors. How hard is it to keep the sponsors, find sponsors and keep the sponsors happy? Was that a lot of external pressure for you to be able to perform at your best? What is that?
Something, yeah. I mean, it definitely can be, right? And like, if I could do my best to expedite some stuff that I've learned for the listeners out there, and I think this would work whether you're going straight or you're drifting or you're flying an air balloon or whatever it is, right? I think the same lessons can parallel in a lot of ways. So hear me out, right? To say something clicked for me when I realized, when I opened my screen printing shop, and at any moment someone could walk in and ask me how much a shirt cost, or when can this be done, or, you know, when I needed to be basically put on the spot and have the answers, I started to learn how to under promise and over deliver. I started to learn how to ask a sponsor, what can I do for you? Do I even fit in your world, right? Like, is this something that you guys can see you're going to grow with me? And asking some of those questions changed the whole game for me, right? Like, what service can I offer you versus saying, hey, I'm Nate Hamilton, I'm a drifter, and I'm going to win this race, right? So I started to really try to pitch sponsors differently, and dude, that seemed to go so far. So
how was that received by companies?
I mean,
that approach.
A lot of them would say, we've never heard this before. A lot of them would say, wow, you want to talk about a 3-year deal right now? Like, and if we're not going to do 3 years, then you're not interested? Let me take this up to my boss. Hey, there's one kid saying this, you know? And they're like, wow, that just sounds different. Put him on the phone. And when they put me on the phone, I'd be like, hey, what up? Like, I want to do these things. And, you know, the beauty of it is I'm doing grassroots tours. So, like, where do you want to see me? Where is your marketplace marketable? And how can I help you guys? And they were just like, yes.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And that's how it really changed, because I went from, hey, man, I'm going to go racing and I'm going to win. And that's like what I'm betting on. And they're like, well, everyone says that. And that's like where I took a different approach. That's
interesting. So you have a lot of experience with the sponsorship world, and we're starting to get into this as far as reaching that part or that level. When you approach the sponsors that way, what are some advice to people, instead of calling someone up and saying, hey, I want, free tires because I'm going to win? Cool. What's the key things that you would say to other people that are really good at it, right? That are looking to do this professionally? How do they do? Do you have a portfolio you send over? Do you have social media stuff that you send over to show like reach? What does that look like for Nate Hamilton?
I would say understanding what you need is like the first step, right? Like, so understanding what your overhead is to operate whatever you're going to do or run. Like, to parallel, right? My first season back in the car in 2019, because 2017 I left Formula Drift. 2018 my car sat under a press and had a ton of flash and sticky stuff on it from t-shirts all year. I didn't touch a steering wheel or a gas pedal. So 2019 I kind of got pried off the press and back into racing. And I did 4 events in 12 months. 4 times I drifted in 12 months, which for some guys nowadays is like nothing. They're like, well, that's not even enough to get rolling, right? But that's all I could do. So the point being is to say, if you go to a tire partner or you go to a fuel partner or any partner, understanding what you need is the first step. Because if you don't even know what you need, how are they to say what you need?
Gotcha.
Right? So that's a huge, huge key in the conversation, is knowing what you need.
Is it always a monetary ask? or a parts and equipment ask?
It depends on your service, right? Like if some companies are like, hey, we just need some photos and we don't really want to be that invested in this program, but like we do want to post sometimes, it's like, okay, well then that could be fit for this, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, it really does vary, but I would say like for the most part, the goal is to cover your expenses and pay your family, like feed your family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is a new thing for you too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
You're a pops.
Yeah, dude.
You're a dad now, dude.
Yeah.
How legit is that?
Dude, it's insane, man. Like, you know, we didn't really plan to have a kid, me and my lady, but boom, here came this dude. We had a home birth. It went super smooth.
Nice.
Indy runs around like crazy. He loves his bike. He's charging down, like he's the show, right?
Yeah.
He's at events. He's riding his bike. He's charging down hills, face planting, running back up to get the thing done. Like,
Nice.
He's insane. So, yeah, definitely another layer to the onion that just makes you wake up and go, all right, dude, we need to work.
Did that change the aspect or the drive for you?
I think it just built in some accountability, right? I think it just built in like a little bit more of like oh man, like I could see another 10 years from now, this would be a good setup for him, you know? So it just gave me another thing to aim for, right? Another goal to hit outside of my own. And I know for me and my lady, it was definitely much more of like, we're not really living for each other anymore, although we are, right? But like now we've got this dude that we definitely want to make sure has the best chance to do what he wants, you know?
Some people's approach to that.
Yep.
Do you want him to be in the motorsports world?
Dude, I think next week he'll be on his 11th flight this year.
Really?
He's in the motorsports world, dude.
So
He's about to have a sponsorship already. You know what I mean? Like he's two.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like-
awesome.
Yeah, so
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you know, taking what we develop as, you know, dads in the industry can expedite stuff that, you know, if he chooses to, great, right? Like, I definitely think we could set him up well. He loves his steering wheel. He loves his bike. He's already sitting in cars at the shop every day. So he's around a lot of different characters and cars already. And yeah, we'll just see what he enjoys, you know?
It's pretty cool. I've got a 4 and a 3-year-old, and each race event that they're there watching is just that much more special,
Yeah.
right? So it's changed the way that I've approached business, approached life. Very much in what you're saying. It's how can we set them up?
Yeah.
Whether they take the torch from here and carry it on or not, but how can I set them up to be better or do what they want?
Yeah.
In a free spirited, free thinking kind of way.
And you know, it's so funny because I feel like with my son and even some of my employees, it's the same approach, right? It's like when I'm looking at a new hire, it's like, what naturally do they want to do? And can they elevate our program at 144 with what they want to do naturally? Like, is the employee aligned with their own self when they work here? And I parallel that to my son because it's like, that's the approach I would want for him as well. And so having, you know, 10 employees before my son almost prepared me some for the kid.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, oh, cool. Like, you know, I can see how some of this works and I can see how, you know, people's actions and their word may change over time. And how do I adapt to that? And how do I work within that? And how do I kind of keep the bowling ball going straight off the bumpers? And you know, it's like,
It's a daily struggle.
it's like having employees can feel like having a ton of family or friends and kids, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's a struggle to find the balance between it, you know?
I mean, I just want to find good people that do what they say, right? It's like all about, are you being honest with me? Can you keep your character straight over time? And it's something at 144 we take a lot of pride in because our retention is great, right? Like most guys are 2, 3, 4 years in now consistently, and kind of the, you know, retention, if you will, is going really well by just guiding them in what they want to do, and paying attention to that as kind of the operator.
Do you have an advisor that you talk to or helps you with that, with business stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've grown into that stuff, like one of my first business mentors changed my life, dude. Chris, check this out. So it's like I'm moving into a new building.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a tape measure on the floor and I'm preparing to put my oven, right? So like we got the press and the oven and so there's a race car and an oven and I'm like measuring out where I'm going to put it. And this guy walks in and he's just kind of like, what you up to? And he's very casual. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm setting up my oven and I'm going to screen print and drift.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And he kind of leaves, and it's just like, he's explaining to me later in life, he's like, no one says that, right? Like I'm going to screen print and go drift. It's like, so later I learned that like he comes in, suddenly he's around a lot. He's like, hey man, I got to be honest. Like I own the complex and I just have never had anybody tell me they're going to screen print and drift. And so I'd love to keep an eye on you and learn all about this. And so I'm screen printing still and he's standing over me and he's like, how much ink went down on that shirt? How much time did that take? Measure your ink out. How, he just taught me that. And it was all of the like nerdy math stuff that I hated. Right. Yeah. And it's like, then here comes this P&L report of the month and it's like, we lost money. And I'm like, what? He's like, we lost money. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like I've been screen printing every day all month. Like this is awesome. We're busy. Yeah. And he's like, well, we're not, and he just really changed my life when the day he said, Nate, you need to stop screen printing. And I was like, Alan, like I love to screen print. I'm screen printing. The work is busy. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. And he was like, we will make more money if you are out in the world being Nate and you bring in the work and we'll find solutions to scale the printing. Go be you. And I remember, obviously I hired my first pressman at that point because I listened to him and I was like, all right, I'll replace me with, this guy. And I just started bringing in work. And suddenly there was just way too much work to even fit in the building. And we evolved from there. So it was like so interesting that when I got out of my own way, everything took off.
That's unique. Not too many people see that.
It's really a roll of the dice, right? Like it's something that now when I go around in the world and I step into shops or, I see whatever team's operating and it's just like, it can be where you see the owner still just sweating it out and changing the oil and bitching about the thing. And, it's like they can't get out of their own way, you know? And for me, it was such a blessing that I was able to take that gamble at that time and be like, you know what? Like I'll be the head of sales and I'll operate and I'll figure, like I'll just let the process happen and I'll feed it. And that has obviously...
Was that scary to let it go?
Yeah, because I didn't know any different, right? It's like to the point of like, well, if I'm not tuning the car, then my tuning company surely can't do as good as I'm doing it right now. And it's like, oh, but I learned like all I was doing was a mesh count and an off contact and a stroke. And like, here's how I'm screen printing. And if I give you the math and you can do the same, now I'm off getting new business to keep you busy. And then suddenly now we're like really like leveling up all this new work. And so it was like kind of like letting my ego go to allow the next pressman to shine. And it was good. So
it was the same situation. So this is a very good point for the people watching here that are trying to get into the business. There's the start where you have to put in the work, and then you have to hand that over to a hired hand that you trust so you can do the next step.
Yep.
Because people originally came to 144 Motorsports for print work because of Nate Hamilton.
And I took so much pride in being able to say like, I screened that shirt. I screened that shirt. I screened all of those, like the first, and to put it in perspective here for you guys. So my first year of business in 2018, when I did not touch a steering wheel or a gas pedal, I screen printed every day, night and day. And it was so fun. I used to burn my screens, screen my job, package up the order, clean my press, go recoat my screen for the next day. I did this for a year straight. And I know for a fact I did $110,000 annual. And that's not net, that's gross.
Yeah.
And again, when I kind of tried my best to work with a CPA for the first time and balance my books out, they were like, yep, and you were about 15% profitable, so you made 15 grand. And I was like, oh, like I can't even feed myself.
Yeah.
But I worked my face off.
Yep.
But what I did in that time was I learned the process. Like I went through the process and I learned it. And I was just able to feed myself enough to get through what I would call just kind of the sweat equity of the program, right?
That's what I try to advise to a lot of shop owners, you know, the younger crowd that are coming up. You'll find the same situation. And I think it's no matter what business it is, owners can get stuck in this trap of doing it themselves and not being the face of the company or sales. Okay. So there's a point in time where I can't install a header, where it costs my company more for me to put the header on than it does for me to do the hired help, because now I can hire this guy to put the header on, but I can go out here and talk to the 3 guys that are waiting for me to call them back to sell them their job to talk about their car. And instead of focusing on, I'm going to install this part because this is my company, I want to say, I made that car fast.
It's really interesting. It's like, you know, as the business owner and kind of the operator, if you will, a lot of times I feel like I have to live in the future. And a lot of the current, like, living in the moment is where I can't be anymore. Mm-hmm. And so there's this kind of addictive spirit to owning a business where, you know, you reach a certain level and, you know, you hit this benchmark, but you really need to be understanding the next one to hit, because you kind of get this like little army underneath you where they're like, hey guys, what's next? And you're like, you need to know, right? So you're really living in the future to guide the team on where we're headed versus living in the now. So to your point of installing a header, it's like, hey man, you know, I'd love to screen print this job with you right now, but if I do this, I don't know what we're going to be doing next week, right? So like, let me go work on next week while you work on this week, and then we all keep feeding our families first. If I hang out with y'all right now, we may not have anything to do next week.
Absolutely. That was a hard thing for me to let go and adjust to, you know?
I mean, because that original workload is like what we love. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure for you, you know, like from start to finish, like physically putting parts on, tuning, taking a car out, running it. I mean, that's like what we love to do, you know? And I think that's like the hardest part of it all, is like to not do that anymore, but watch it also grow. And that's where with my people too at the shop, obviously at 144, it's like everyone's getting to be more knowledgeable and better than me, which is great. Like I'm actually understanding whether, because we got into fulfillment now. So just like back end of websites and, you know, different options with inks, and my whole team is starting to have more knowledge than me, which I love, because I want everyone on my team to be better than me. Yeah. But it's just cool to watch that go further than even I could take it.
Yeah, because when you add that aspect of things, it becomes more fluent. In the world of future thinking, you get to find the holes and fill those voids, because now you're not worried about the task at hand. You're able to see and view things on what they need to be in the future. So if you see, okay, well, I'm able to look at this whole process from the start of an order to the time it ships out. We fall here and here and here, so we need to fix these. But if you're focused on doing that stroke of the ink, you let the other pieces fall because you're focused on the task at hand.
Absolutely.
And that's where some of the businesses fail, because then those gaps eat them up, and then they struggle with it and they fall behind, and they never be as best as they could.
Exactly. And something like subconsciously has to kind of shake your world to get you to think differently. And similar to me too, right? Like that had to happen to me multiple times. Like in Formula Drift, my world changed. Just operating in certain forms of business changed. And you kind of almost get addicted to those moments, right? Where those big changes become oh wow, I don't know what the next chapter is going to be, But if I believe in it and I lean into it, just like this chapter's awesome, the next one will be better, you know?
Yep. So how does that process look for you? When you're making, or when you're seeing these opportunities, are you going out to find them? What's that process like?
I would say, you know, for me, just in the history of it, the first one with Formula Drift, like I did push that one because I was like, I need to change my life. I'm not happy. And then the second one, like when I found Alan, my business mentor, that was much more of a, why is this happening? And I need to listen to this because something's way over my head, but something is going on with my intuition in this moment. And then I reach kind of more operating moments like now where it's like, okay, cool, the bank account can say this for this many years straight. And we're kind of, the sea is kind of calm, right? And it's like, nothing crazy is going to happen if I don't switch it up. And it's cool, right? Like as long as everybody's not asking for a raise, we can operate like this. But if we want to push the limits and we want to go further, something has to happen where I'm going to break a door down and push for something different. And that's how we can stretch. So I keep saying addicted, but I keep using this like addictive spirit to where, you know, some people would look at like my business P&L and be like, wow, that's great. He's doing great. This is awesome. This is further than he's ever been. Mm-hmm. And everything's awesome. And I'm kind of at that elevator level where I'm like, what's next? Like, I need to do something else because this is great, but it isn't like there's more here, right?
What is next? What's this next thing that you're trying to push? Or it doesn't even have to be this next thing if you don't want to share that just yet. But when it went from, you know, moving from Wiley to Denton, was that a door, an opportunity? Was that a business logical move that you made that? Because from the outside in, to me, it makes sense on why you're in Denton, college town, right?
Yeah. I mean, college town, yes, but again, to our retention, right? Like I've only been there for 4 years and I've got people who've been there with me for 4 years. So yes, there is the kind of lust of like kids that are very creative in Denton, which is really the reason, right? Like a lot of people in Denton feel free to be themselves, push the limits on being creatives, and that's awesome. Our production floor is in Denton as well. So when I was in Wiley and I started to market, I met a business partner of mine that we partnered with, and she's in Denton, and that brought me to Denton as well. So there was just this whole movement of Denton being a cool place to be. But to your point, as far as like what's next for 144, I would say like, you got to imagine, right? It's like, I'm taking the process that I've learned myself, such as I'm 7, or whatever I was at the time. I'm 19. I'm designing my livery because I'm going to Formula Drift. I'm designing my team gear. I'm designing my trailer livery. You know, I need to figure out how to whip out a table and sell some merch with my dad at the track. And all this stuff's kind of confusing. There's so many little details in all of this. Yeah. And I need a website, and then I need to sell a t-shirt on a website. And so I've been able to basically take the process that I personally have been working on over the last 10 years of my life and expand that further, right? So proud to say with Chelsea Denofa and Grant Anderson and Chris Forsberg and Nappy Boy with T-Pain and Hurt, right? It's like we're fulfilling for these guys. We're operating the back end of some of their websites. They're on some of those athletes are featured on our website. So really I'm working on scaling now. I've got the process of, hey, the sales chicks will take care of you. We'll print the product. We'll fold bag tag it. Like box A goes to the track for you guys. Box B is on the shelf ready to ship. Okay, you need help with your website. We got it. And then really opening that door further for other athletes like a Troy Lee Designs or, you know, kind of like a pro shop, if you will, to where they're taking care and they have a team. That's my next goal. I really would love like this team in drifting. And I think that feels different because a lot of the YouTube world and a lot of the current, you know, influencer world is like, look at me, right? Look at me. And 144 has always given everything. I just give shit away. Yeah. I'd rather just give it away and be like, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I just give everything away. And so now I really want to take that momentum and build a team dynamic and take care of more people. And so that's something I've struggled with for our YouTube even is like, I keep telling my team, it's like, guys, I want to make this like about 144 and like like a team than just Nate Hamilton. Like I would like to step out of the spotlight some and build this team up and kind of have that like motocross vibe, you know?
That's awesome. So a lot of people also think, because this is kind of taught in the school system, college school system, a business plan, business model. Did you ever sit down and write anything down?
Dude, no. And like I said, like how, you know, my dad was digging ditches and my mom was a front of house receptionist. Like mom went on to do well with that, and she ended up over time purchasing into her company. So she is technically a business owner herself.
Nice.
And I remember when I started my shop, to the point of giving everything away, it's called Rhythm Print Supply LLC, right? Because I thought you needed rhythm, you needed to print, and we needed to supply to the industry.
Yeah.
And the phone would ring, where's Nate? Where's 144? Where's Nate? 144. And I just said, damn it. I gotta like do a DBA as 144's Print House and Race Studio. But I ended up calling my mom when I got my first LLC. And I was like, all right, mom, like, how do I do this? Like, how do you operate a business? Yeah. And she was like, well, it's different for everyone. And I literally felt like, oh shit, like it is different for everyone. And there's so many business models and there's so many ways to under promise and over deliver and operate your own business. And so then it really felt like freedom. Like I was like, wait, there's no singular like model that I need. Like no one's going to pin me on a wall and say, do exactly this. Yep. And it made me even feel more free. Like I was like, wow, this is kind of endless. And that's when I became addicted, dude.
Yeah. So for me, that's the addictive nature per se in it is I never wrote down a business plan, a model, right? This is what I'm going to do. For me, the challenge of coming in every day and being able to call audibles, to look in the future and know, okay, this is where we're going to go, or this is it. For me, we started working on all brands, Nissans, the GMs, the Fords. We would take everything in. Now we're only specific to one brand, right? So people would say that's absurd. You're a speed shop and you don't work on all sports cars. We only do just one brand of car. And so calling those audibles to be able to be more efficient, more geared and specific to certain brands has really made us that much faster, smoother, profitable than being a jack of all trades. So for me, the calling the audibles, not being pinned to, oh no, this is not right. It's not, I did not write this down. This is not in my plan. And start freaking out, and then you shut down. So I 100% get the addictive nature in staying, futuristic looking.
Yeah, and like how we talk about scaling too, I'm just now learning about, investors and, how people have an idea and then they can write a business plan and they have their 4-year return on investments and they go get investors and they expedite the income to do the project. And like, that was not me. Like I was the skateboarder and drifter and, oh, wow, I got $5,000. Okay, my equipment only costs $3,000. I'll have $2,000 in the bank and some presses. And all right, great. This is perfect. You know what I mean? Yep. So it was like, I remember having $6,000. I remember having $7,000, $14,000, $20,000. Like I remember like building my own capital to operate. And that was my business approach, was just save everything, invest back in my own company until I reached a certain moment. And I'm still kind of doing that same run of show. I'm just now understanding like, oh, cool. Like I do understand if I bring in this account and this account, I could tackle that with this investor and then pay him off over time and then have this like branch of the business that I wouldn't have had. And now we have some, business history, if you will. And all of that just gets easier and easier. So to your point, it's like no like 1 through 10 step program. It was just a send it and hope it works.
Hope it works. And quickly change what doesn't work, right?
Yeah, dude. And be happy with either way. Like I remember, and I still have to tell myself this, obviously the stakes get like larger and larger, but I still have to tell myself like, we have so many years in business. Like we can drift when we're 45. We can drift when we're 50. We can race when we're 60, right? Mm-hmm. Like just take your time with it. Take your time in the process of it And as long as you're happy with it, it's good. You know what I mean? Like, I loved screen printing for a year and bringing in $100,000 to only net $10,000. I love that time in my life. Yeah. If I did that again next year, I'd be a huge failure, right? Like, to my current operations. Yep. But like, I love that moment. And so loving those moments get you to where you want to be. And so for all the young kids out there listening, it was just for me about patience and a vision over time that I stuck with. And I think that was a huge goal, was to see a vision and stick with it over time and not flop on yourself over 2 months and give up.
So you've done all this on your own?
Yeah.
Or you have investors with it? Or?
No. I'm the sole owner. I did start with the partner. Shout out Corey Denemy. Mm-hmm. So when I was living in Florida, my media dude, Corey, who filmed my whole life.
Was a legend.
He's a legend.
He did amazing videos.
I love Corey. And I had no clue what he was doing, right? He came from California and just said, hey, you're drifting. It's interesting. I need to make a documentary for my college. Can I come film you? Sure. I'm just drinking beer, talking to a camera, not knowing what I was doing when I was 20 or whatever the math was. 21.
Yeah.
So it was like, I didn't know what he was doing, and he was doing such a huge thing for my career, and I love Corey to this day for that. And so anyways, when we left in Juku, we went together, and we basically started Rhythm Print Supply LLC. He later on exited and went on his own path. And I am the sole owner, and I'm still the sole owner.
So instead of doing, is there more reward in you doing it on your own than it was the route of finding investors? Do you prefer that?
I mean, I think to my point with the business plan, just my nature was not to pitch a big idea to you to need the income to go execute that. It was just like, hey man, leave me alone in the shop for a year and watch what I'm about to do. Yeah. Like the under promise, over deliver. I didn't really care to shout out my big idea and hope someone cared. I was just like, I'm going to do this. And one day I'm going to look up and everyone's going to be like, holy shit, he accomplished this. And that was just how I lived my life. And I still kind of do that to this day, right? Like, yeah, I am now just starting to get opportunities where people are calling me, be going, hey, I want to move all of my business to you. It's this much, annual like opportunity. And so can you get to the scale for me? And then I'm like, well, shit, I'm going to need another line. And if I need another line, I'm going to need to put this press and oven in place and these employees. And so, I'm kind of seeing that now as we are performing well at the current like state of our volume. So yeah, it's just kind of like, I'm just now getting to that point, but I'd much rather do it the fucking like sun on your back, dig a ditch way,
What's the future of 144 and Nate Hamilton?
Dude, I mean, I am wheel-to-wheel racing now. I don't know if you've seen any of that Rush stuff. Yeah. So it's like, I just got slapped in the face with opportunity from Sunoco and Rapscallion, and now I'm finding like them signing me up for all these races, and it's like, you're going to race 13 more times this year. And like, I'm like, wow. And that has a lot of endurance to it. So just trying to be healthy and be ready for, 20 minutes like sprints. We do 4 at a Grid Life. So we do 2 sprints, 2 races in a day, right? Yeah. 4 in a weekend. Mm-hmm. So that type of stuff is taking like Nate Hamilton, the character, elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But I feel like for the print house and the racing studio, it's all about just taking care of more people. And that just comes with more attention to detail and scaling up, like the front of house to the production floor to the fulfillment center. We're kind of seeing our walls shrinking, right? Like boxes and boxes are showing up. And so I think just taking care of more of the industry is like my immediate goal.
Do you have a cap?
I mean,
do you have a I want to get here and then I'm here?
Yeah, I would say as an operator, I do. Yeah. Right. Like I'm kind of experiencing for the first time, like a slow moment in business, let's say, where like just a few months can be a little slower, and you're like, oh yeah, I was out racing, right? Like I wasn't calling my contacts and keeping up with the industry, and a lot of times too, like, if I'm at the shop for a week, by day 3, I'm like, oh, I could throw this logo on this and send it over your way, and people are like, oh, that's super sick, let's make it, right? So like I'm naturally just creating and being like, check this out, just like not necessarily, I would say like asking for work, but just more or less like, I see this for your brand, and they're like, that's a great idea. And so it is scary for me to go racing more and focus less on the clients, but I need to just put the right person in place to do that. And then maybe in a year or two, I can step fully away from operating the business, which will be another huge, scary moment for me, right? You know what I mean?
Big step.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's
That's
tough.
awesome.
So there is a cap, right? So if we get large enough, I know that takes a certain amount of focus to be honest with our people. And when I know I can't do that because my racing endeavors are taking me further, I need to be honest in those moments. That way the athletes, the clients, the people working with the print house don't feel neglected.
Very unique and interesting perspective for sure. And that's cool to hear that in the world that you're in as far as business, because I would never, which is why I don't do any screen printing, I could never think that way, right? It's a different kind of vision that you have, and it's very unique to you. You're gifted in that ability to be able to do that. I've always been a fan of your liveries on the cars, the shirts you've had, the merch you've had, the social media presence you've had. You've always been someone who's been, I would say, ahead of this curve before we had a word called influencers, right?
Yeah.
A YouTube stars, any of that. We were just documenting our world with a bunch of kids that had cameras and had no idea where this would be going.
Yeah, and that really came from skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like when you were a skateboarder, when I was a skateboarder, my sole mission was to become a pro and create as many skate edits as possible, right? Like your skate videos were your identity. And so going out and filming at an early age was like what we did. We would go either find a generator from a friend, bring some lights, light up the school at night, skate till we get kicked out. Like that was just like filming and being creative behind a camera was very natural for me. And then when drifting came around, that creative process with screen printing, it was like what I was doing. I was screen printing butterflies and rainbows, going drifting. So for me, I was like, well, I could put my own logo on my shirt. And it just was natural that I was going to keep creating. And so the creative process for me was kind of like first, and then whatever action, whether it be skating or drifting, was second.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap this episode up, what piece of advice would you give that Nate Hamilton, whether it was 20 years ago or whether it was in that 2018-17 timeframe, knowing now what you know, which is a plethora of knowledge, what piece of advice would you give that either entrepreneur that's coming up or the younger version of you?
Dude, there's so much in that question, right? Like there's just so much you can say. So I'll just ramble some stuff. And if anyone gets anything from this, awesome. I would say, there was a time and place where I just took a little bit of time to be quiet with myself. And what I mean by that is try to align with something you intuitionally feel that you enjoy doing. I think anytime you're going to operate a business and have liability, meaning people that are trusting in you and feeding people, you need to be very honest and you need to be very aware of the room. And so aligning yourself with whatever intuitionally you love to do is a good step in the right direction. Also, the lust of money and the lust of the process are two things that I would be very careful to pay attention to. And I think falling in love with the process is always better than falling in love with the result. For example, like you would know, right? It's like you create a certain dynamic in a header that you love. And the reason why you love that is not to sell 1 million of them, but, oh, wow, we sold a ton of them and that's awesome, right? But like caring why you built it is first. And the under promise, over deliver will always take you further, right? So giving yourself time, under promise, over deliver, actually being aligned with what process in your heart you love to do, I think you're unstoppable, right? I think at that point, when you connect those dots, you're like, I'm going to be the best chef. I'm going to be the best whatever. I'm going to be the best roof builder. Like it can unfold for you. And when people know you're honest and when people know you care, they will trust you. And that goes like so far in any industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for coming.
No, it's cool. And congrats to you guys for this. And thanks for having me on. And it's just really cool to see, I've had a lot of people come into Dallas and being around Dallas lately. And I'm just so stoked that like the Dallas-Fort Worth area seems to be blowing up and has so much opportunity lately. And it's exciting.
Yeah, man. I would say just the things that you've done to help us with our brand, our merch, everything. I mean, it's been awesome. There's tons of people in this world that do what you do, but at the level of you do it, which everything you're saying, you can see. I could describe those things about you and your company by interacting with your company without having you sit here and say that.
That means a lot.
You are honest with us. You've told us what needed to be done when it had to be done and when you could get it done, and it's done and there and ready for pickup at what it is. And your team has always been transparent, perfect, easy to communicate with, and awesome. And a great extension of what I know Nate Hamilton to be.
Dude,
so
sick.
It's been good, and congrats to you, your business, and what you've conveyed for your employees to give to your customers. It definitely shows. So hats off.
Dude, that
Good
means
job.
the most, man.
Good job.
I got to make sure the team gets that clip. You know what I mean? That was awesome.
That was good job, man. Keep it up. Keep pushing. And I'm always excited to see where you're going to go next.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. We'll see you.